viewed the war effort in Vietnam, and I know it was a turning point for me. I didn't feel safe there anymore. I couldn't wait to go home.
Yeah. What was your response to the Viet Cong? Like, what did you think about them?
Fortunately, I didn't have to shoot back at them. I just had to hide. So, but if I called upon, I was fully armed. I would have shot and I would have fired. And they were my enemies. They were trying to kill me. So.
Did it generally scare U.S. soldiers that there were farmers and other people out there trying to get them dressed as civilians?
Yeah. We heard all kinds of horrible stories about booby-trapped babies, and the people that were helping you during the daytime were willing to blow you up at night. And, you had to pretty much trust your own people. You didn't know who they were, whose allegiance they favored.
All right. You want to ask something?
So did you have any contact with people back in America while in Vietnam?
My parents mostly, and I was married at the time, and occasionally we would be able to patch in on, they called it Mars communications, where we'd talk on over a phone line to a ham radio operator, and they broadcasted to other ham radio operators, and it would go into the phone lines back in the United States. So I had a few phone conversations with my parents and my wife. Not very many. Mostly it was letters. Mail call was huge. Everybody would always show up for mail call and see if you got a package from home, or a letter from home.
When you were over there, did you ever see or involved with napalm or Agent Orange being used?
I was in an Agent Orange area where it was being loaded a lot and handled, and there was defoliation going on around there. And I don't know of any specific health issues that I have as a result of that, but I'm on record as being an Agent Orange area veteran, and if I were to need VA benefits or medical care, I think it would be pretty easy for me to get them. But knock on wood, I've been healthy most of my life, except for an occasional sore throat.
Mm-hmm.
What did your family feel like? How did they feel about you being at war?
Well, they were pretty unhappy about it, and my mother had a hard time with it, and they tried to do various things to get me out of the draft into a National Guard unit, and whatever they tried didn't work. At first, they were sort of like, we weren't really all that aware of the seriousness of our involvement in Vietnam, or the fact that our nation was really at war. It was so early on in the it was the beginning of the big buildup, and it didn't have the attention that it got later on. So, at first, they were disappointed that I was drafted and didn't want me to go into the Army, and then when they found out I was going to Vietnam, they were especially unhappy, but there's nothing anybody could do about it, so I went and survived.
Did you have any siblings?
Well, essentially, I did have an older sister, but she had Down syndrome, so essentially I was like an only child. She was raised separately from us, from me.
Did you lose anyone close to you during the war?
Fortunately, no. I saw a lot of wounded being evacuated and brought into we had a surgical hospital in Chu Lai, and the choppers would be flying in regularly from the battle zones and the battle areas and the landing zones and whatnot. And I used to get a lot of laboratory equipment from the surgical hospital too, so I was over there quite a lot, and I'd see the boys coming in stretchers and going through the triage, and then later on you'd see the bigger airplanes loaded up with the ones that were being evacuated mostly to Japan or back to the United States. So I saw a lot of wounded, but fortunately for myself. And some of my OCS classmates were in much more active combat than I was in. And occasionally they'd come in from the field in what they called a stand down. And it was a chance to recuperate, take a break. So we'd hang out in the officers' clubs, and they'd tell me the stories of what it's like to be in a hot zone and zapper attacks and all the patrols that they had to go on, their experiences. So I was really grateful I was in the supply side of things. Didn't have to do that, but it was a different time in our country.
Mhm.
What was it like when you returned home? What was your reaction?
Overwhelmingly happy, so good to be home, and you miss your friends and you miss your family, you miss the foods that you love, and I felt good and safe, and the war was behind me, and within a few years I had moved out to California and started on my own, did a lot of school afterwards, and got quite a lot of college credits on the GI Bill. Wound up more or less finishing my education and then starting in business on my own. But all along I was watching the war, and it went on another 6 years. It wasn't over until 1975. And I came home in '69. So I was, just seemed to drag on forever, and then just had a winding down that was not satisfying to anybody. It was just colossal mistake on so many levels.
Yeah, what do you think about how the war ended with the U.S. withdrawing? And
I'm glad we did. I mean, there were hawkish people at the time who were advocating dropping small nuclear weapons, and escalating it on and on until we achieved some kind of surrender or victory. But it was wrong. We never, I'm glad cooler heads prevailed, and they tried to negotiate this and negotiate that, and the soldiers who were on the ground fighting were always fighting with one arm tied behind their backs because they weren't given full rein to do everything that was possible to win. And it was a war that was directed by political goals more than strategic goals, and it was just, I think the whole country was never behind the war in the first place, and as the war wound on and on, the country was more and more against the war than for the war, and I think that was the right decision. But the soldiers paid the price for all those stupid acts, and there's far too many. It's not just the 58,000 that died in the United States and the hundreds of thousands that wounded. It's the millions that died in Vietnam. The Vietnamese people suffered greatly, and then we just pulled out. And now we're friends with Vietnam. It's a communist country, but they're turning into an economic powerhouse, and it's easy to go there, and they have no animosity towards us. And it just seems like it was all for nothing.
did you form any close friendships while you were in Vietnam with the?
Not with Vietnamese people.
Or no, with your soldiers?
Yeah, there were a few that I visited after I got out of the Army, and some of them stayed in the service, and I visited a few of them in Europe afterwards. But at the present time, I have no connection with any of my service friends. They've all gone off into different areas. Don't see them anymore.
Is there anything else you'd like to tell us? Any personal stories?
No, I think I pretty much rambled on enough. And, like I said earlier, I think I was fortunate to see the issues of our time up close and be a part of it, and came out in good health and did my duty, and I was proud that I did that. And for me, it worked out really well. And I feel for those that it didn't work out so well. And that's about it.
Mm-hmm. Do you want to show us any of your pictures?
Whatever you want to take a look at.
Yeah.
Here.